what was really interesting is it's really talking about mostly what's happening in New York, so it's not necessarily everywhere in the U.S. or anywhere else. It's just basically in New York City. And we have the problems first, and we realized that when we were looking for the 10 controversial ideas and stuff, they were also a lot of the problems. So we kind of just put those together because so that we wouldn't be redundant. But the first one is the signing of a patriotism pledge. William Maxwell was a superintendent in 1898, and he was able to just enforce this pledge. He was starting with more of what they needed to do, but in the end, he ended up enforcing teachers to sign a pledge being loyal to the government and whatever they wanted to enforce. And a lot of this, during this chapter, is focused on when they were in World War I, the Cold War, and stuff like that. So there was a lot of fear in America. So anyone that signed like they were against America, they would just cut off or fire. So a lot of people, the teachers didn't want to sign the pledge, but they were having to enforce it, and they were going to lose their jobs if they didn't sign it. So that was a big issue for the teachers, and having to really just stop what they were wanting to say, in the classroom. It really kind of held their freedom of speech. The second one is the AD teacher rating system. It really just wasn't successful. This is the principals grading the teachers on how well they're teaching the students, and although it's good to keep the teachers, under a rating, it really, most every teacher just got a B+, and it really didn't help them improve or the students' learning education grow. The average teacher, this is a quote, but the average teacher wasn't hurt, but the exceptional teachers who brought a strong sense of mission into the classroom, and this is discussing a lot about the patriotism pledge and a lot of other things they were enforcing because of the war and because there was so much fear. A lot of the teachers couldn't say what they wanted. And so the teachers that were involved in current events and things outside of the classrooms, they weren't allowed to say what they believed. And the people that were really passionate, the teachers that loved what they were doing, they were the ones getting fired because they were speaking out on what they believed needed to be fixed. And the people that were staying and weren't being fired were the teachers that didn't even know a lot of the current affairs and weren't involved. So it really, even though they're trying to protect the students in America, they're really harming the education by firing all these people. And this is a discussion question that goes with it. How can it be hard for the modern day teacher to go above and beyond? So what do y'all think?
I think because sometimes you want to do everything you can for your students, but there's that fine line of, okay, what's stepping the boundaries of possibly parenting them. Depending on the situation, I think that's kind of that's where we kind of struggle to find the okay to do and maybe a little too far.
And also where teachers are having these standardized tests that they are being forced to teach to, they're not given much wiggle room in the way of wanting to make sure that students understand and are even looking to learn more rather than just learning what's required for the test.
Also, I think that in classrooms, we see things in boxes and what should be taught and what should be discussed, and people get offended if you start bringing in discussions about things that they don't necessarily agree with or that they haven't really thought about. And so I think that sometimes teachers are afraid to go above and beyond in discussion because they don't know the whiplash of what students are going to take home to their parents and say hey, this is what we talked about in class today, and just what they could get in trouble for, what their school could get in trouble for as a whole. So I think that limits a lot of discussion in classrooms as well.
It's just a big problem because the school is supposed to be where we're gaining knowledge and we're open to all these different possibilities, and we're having to be locked into, we can't say this, we can't say that, we're promoting this but not that, and stuff like that. So the Espionage Sedition Act, this was where the teachers were, they sought to disband, this is also going along with it, it's the freedom of speech kind of thing. You had to be very loyal to the government, very loyal to what they were going through. And if you said anything that was against it, people that were, you know, communist parties that might have been against it, you were just thrown out. And so this also was very harmful. And the aptitude test, this was for the students, and this was an IQ test that put you into the education field. So like, if you got so smart on one thing, you could go into these classes but not other ones. And so this was very harmful because certain students weren't allowed to get the education they wanted. For example, there were young ladies that wanted to be nurses, and they were going to these schools to be nurses, but because of their grades and what they were being enforced, they were going through like how to be good homemakers and stuff like that, and they weren't being taught how to be nurses. So they were really blockading the education realm, and they weren't preparing the students to be what they wanted to be. They were just preparing them based on their mindset.
Alright, so number 6, the Feinberg Law. It allowed school districts to dismiss teachers who belong to any organization they didn't agree with. Like, for example, like if the teacher believed in like the Communist Party and stuff like that, they could fire them. 378 teachers' careers were ended because of that law. Purge teachers were rehired and received back pay. So after McCarthyism ended, some purge teachers were rehired and received back pay. A lot of pensions were canceled and were returned to teachers. The pay scale adjusted for length of service and level of degree. Instead of men just getting paid more because they were men, it ended up being like you get a bonus for each year you teach and your degree obtained and stuff like that, which is kind of how it is today. The TU, the Teachers Union, they wanted to help the black neighborhoods by guaranteeing the social help, helping solving the problem of poor, and trying to keep African Americans from dropping out and stuff like that. They implemented small classes, hot lunches, health clinics, and things like that. The United Federation of Teachers became the first recognized legal empowered teacher union, which could negotiate on behalf of the New York City teachers. So they were able to obtain a raise for it was like a $995 raise for all teachers in the following year. They won a grievance process for teachers to dispute the decisions of their supervisors, and all that happened in 1961. So all this was happening with the TU and stuff was right around the Civil Rights Movement and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so equality was being enforced in the classrooms, in textbooks, and in the curriculum, but people were still finding ways to keep minority and female students out of getting a quality education. And the teachers union began addressing these schools and black communities and giving them like hot meals and guidance counselors and nurses for the first time. And there were also more males that were teachers. It increased from 17 to 30% from 1929 to 1960, and that is actually more male teachers than we have now today.
Okay, so for our change agents, we found the UFT founders, who was David Selden, George Altemeyer, and Al Schenker. And the reason they were important is because on November 7th, 1960, the entire group led a one-day teacher strike, and they demanded higher teacher pay, smaller classes, and lunch periods free from school fees.
Okay, so some similarities and differences that we have is still today, I mean, we have taken a lot of strides in closing the gap of gender payment, but there still is a lot of difference between these payments. So, like, I looked on the national website and it said women were paid about $48,000, men were paid about $53,000 on average in the education department. So there still is a big gap that, you know, I believe all of us will try to tackle in the future. So they started these tests during this time where they were separating students by their IQ and their GPA. And I know we try not to look at that as much nowadays, but we still do it. We, you know, with your honors classes, your AP classes, your college prep classes, there still is a GPA gap in between these students and where we place them. Differences today, our classroom sizes, I mean, they're much smaller than what they used to be in education. So, you know, we're all coming in contact with praxis.
fun. So, that's something that's a lot, it's fairly new, praxis. But, something that also I wanted to talk about is, you remember, earlier in the presentation, they were talking about how, your nationality, like they would find people who were being outspoken against the United States. I wanna pull that back to remember the beginning of this semester when we talked about the child that didn't stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance and how should he have stood, should he have not, and that's something that's still going on today is our freedom of speech and our nationality and how we should view that within the classroom.
So how the teachers and the students were viewed is a little bit better than the previous chapter, but there was this quote from a union leader, so who worked in the teachers, for teachers, wanted to make teachers, their position better. He said that high school teachers are like assembly line workers. They're peace workers. He didn't think that teachers spend enough time with their students. He said, you don't know the kids well enough to get any job satisfaction, which as a future educator, I find kind of enraging. And we have a discussion question. Do you think teachers are like assembly line workers in any way? Are we like that? Are we gonna be like that? Are students cars that we're putting parts on? What do y'all think?
I think I've had some teachers that are like that, but I've definitely had I've had less of the assembly lines. The ones that are like that are the ones that I've experienced that are just there to make their retirement payment, or not payment, but their account, whatever. They're just there for the money. They're not there because they actually like it, but I've had, like, I would say 95% of my teachers have been the type that have wanted to know me, have gotten to know me, still talk to me today.
Anybody else? Yeah.
The teachers that treated me like assembly line workers, I actually kind of learned the best from because there was order and it was easy to understand because no one was distracting me, so.
Teachers at that time were seen as the brainwashers of America's youth. That is part of the McCarthyism. Like if our teachers are communists, then we're gonna make our youth communists and everything's gonna be bad. But saying that they're brainwashers, like students are being brainwashed and teachers aren't expected to form those original thoughts or those new ideas, which should be what education is based on. And then in this chapter, they're still debating the issue of vocational versus classical teaching. But the main problem with that was that they were deciding whether the school officials were deciding whether the students went into vocational or classical teaching instead of the student themselves deciding which they wanted to participate in, because both have merit, I think. And that is the end of our presentation on the Orgy of investigation. We have our
I did?
Alright.
They still do.
Dang it.
I'm behind.
Almost on the board.
I'm behind actually graders.
That's good.
Cool.